Hello, everyone. Um, Welcome to another segment of intellectual brainstorming and academic excellence. As you have all known, this platform is for the sharing of ideas. Is an educational platform. Is a medium through which we educate, enlighten, and also try to pass or edify our knowledge about conceptual topics as it relates to political science and the government. I want to use this medium to say a very big thank you to our returning viewers and those that have started following our page. We say a very big thank you as well. Today we're going to look at something different, something unique, something spectacular, something something different, something that can build us up academically in our careers, in our quest to build up our knowledge because information is power. So today we're looking at what we call fiscal federalism and the problems of revenue allocation in Nigeria. That is fiscal federalism and the problem of revenue allocation in Nigeria. If you've been following my topics, my lectures so far, I've actually discussed what we mean by federalism. So we'll not go deeply into that, in this segment. So when you talk about federalism, you are talking about a system of government in which governmental powers that exist in the state is shared between the central government that represent the whole country and the component unit, thereby making each government to be independent and autonomous. And we also mentioned that in a federal system of government, there are, the constitution actually provides for how powers are to be shared. We have what we call the exclusive list, we have what we call the concurrent list, and we also have what we call the residual list. The residual list. So the government actually, exercise power in the area of the exclusive list, the concurrent list, and the residual list, and that's how it has been working. And they also mentioned the characteristics of government. I said, of federal system of government, there is what we call sharing of power between the central government and the component unit. You have the duplication of offices. You have what we call the supremacy of the constitution. You have what we call the adoption of the rule of law, and all these concepts under federalism. So, but now we're talking about fiscal federalism and what and the problem of revenue allocation in Nigeria. Now, when you're talking about fiscal federalism, this topic is very important. Fiscal federalism actually focuses on government taxation and government spending to assist government operations at any level of governance. What we're saying here is that fiscal federalism is talking about what the issue of taxation. When you're talking about taxation, taxation is very, very important in government because taxation is a medium through which the government can be able to, when it is being collected, it can be able to provide the people with the basic needs as well as infrastructural facilities. So taxation is imperative. Tax is what is an engine of government. For the government to be able to function effectively, then the collection of taxes is very important. So if you are referring to fiscal federalism, it focuses on what or concentrates on what on government taxation and how government what spends money to assist government in what in operation. So without taxation, governmental operations or activities what will be deadlocked. So fiscal federalism works when the central government, uses tax revenue to share with the other levels of government or municipal or or regional government, that is state or or local government. So fiscal revenue federalism has to do with with the federal, the state, and the local government So the central government can do this through what they can actually share this, taxes or money collected in form of taxes. They can share it with the state and the local government or the regional or the municipal government through what we call grants or transfer payments. So the concept of physical federalism emerged in government in the modern era of what we call republics and the democracies. Republics and democracy. So it is made up of, it is made through the work of the man called Richard Musgrave. So if you are looking for, okay, who actually propounded, or wrote on the issue of physical federalism or taxation, you are referring to the man called Richard Musgrave. So he published a research paper on the theory of what we call finance. Finance. So fiscal, federalism attempts to, to define the division of governmental functions and the financial relationship between different levels of government. So there's a financial relationship among the different levels of government between the federal, which is the central government, the state, and the local government. So the concept of federalism was made popular by the man called Casey. So if you are asking about or you're looking for the person that actually wrote on federalism, it is the man called Casey Way. This person usually come out in exams where they will ask who actually propounded the principle of federalism. It is actually what Casey Way. So according to Casey Way, it is the method of of dividing powers so that general and regional government are each within a spheres of their own domain, so that they can be able to function effectively. However, other scholars have also written about on federalism, like the man called William Vicar, we have William Livingstone, then we have Daniel Elaza. They are all written on the federalism. So when you talk about physical federalism, you are talking about that relationship that exists between the central government, the state government, and the local government. So the federalism actually entail the constitutional division of power between the central government and the federating unit. So for each of them to perform their constitutional role, they must have access to independent finance. So for the government to be able to function effectively, it must have access to independent finance. That is, the central government, the state government, and the local government must have access to independent finance. So what we're saying there is that physical federalism is very important, and federalism, as it relates to this topic we're talking about, is also very, very important. So physical federalism is a particular pattern of constitutional division of revenue power and responsibilities among levels of government. The federal government has occupied a very strong position among the state and the local government since the 1970s in Nigeria. This is because most of the power relating to economic development are explicitly centralized at the federal level. Don't forget, I mentioned exclusive list, I mentioned concurrent list, and I also mentioned residual list. When you talk about exclusive list, the central government legislates only on the exclusive list. It cannot share to the state. But on the concurrent list, both the state and the central government legislate on the concurrent list. Then when you are talking about the residual list, in some countries, both the central and the state also what legislate what on this residual list. So fiscal federalism, has a very lengthy, history in Nigeria dating back to what to 1946, dating back to what to 1946 when the Richard Constitution was actually enacted. I've also talked about constitutional development in Nigeria when I mentioned the Clifford Constitution of 1922, the Richard Constitution of 19. Before that Richard, we have what we call the Bodilon Constitution of 1936. Then you have what we call the Richard Constitution of 1946. They have what we call the Mafasin Constitution of 1951. They have what we call the Little Constitution of 1953. Then you have the Lagos Constitutional Conference, you have the London Constitutional Conference, you have the 1957 Constitutional Conference. Before Nigeria would actually gain independence was in 1960. So different what constitutional conferences were actually were actually attended before Nigeria attained independence. But there were some actual constitutions that were enacted in Nigeria. One of those constitutions was the Richard Constitution of 1946. So the Richard Constitution of 1946 laid the foundation for what? For fiscal federalism in Nigeria. It laid the foundation for fiscal federalism in Nigeria. So the issue of fiscal federalism can be dated back to 1946 under the Richard Constitution. So Nigeria fiscal federalism arose from historical, economic, geographical, cultural, and social consideration based on the fact that Nigeria is a multilingual and multi-ethnic society. Multilingual and multi-ethnic society. What do I mean by multi-ethnic society? The society that is made up of people with different ethnicities. Ethnicities. We have the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Igbos, the Bibios, the Domas, the Efik, the Thieves, the Nubes, the Kanuris. There are all many of them. So it is made up of different ethnicities. Then you have what we call multilingual society. Multilingual society in Nigeria, for example, we have about 350 languages. So the structure, the historical background of Nigeria allows for it to adopt what we call a physical federalism. So the in this topic, we're going to look at each of them, if time permits us, one after the other. So the introduction of, democratic government in 1999 actually re-echoed the challenges of intergovernmental physical arrangement among the various government, levels of government with the question of of resource control. Over the years, the question of resource control has always, emerged. Resource control, what we call derivation, because an area where natural resources are being gotten from, there's supposed to be a particular percentage of allocation that's supposed to be collected by that entity. You understand? Derivation. So the issue of resource control, as is done in the United States of America, the states have the right to control their own resources. They have the right to control their own resources, but that is not the case in Nigeria. So, but we have what we call resource control. So, if a locality is producing a particular natural resources, it should have the capacity and the right and the power to control that of resources, and that's what we mean by what we call a resource control. So the Supreme Court has created a fiscal stampede, allowing the president to introduce a new revenue allocation of the present to the federal government, where they allocated 24.72% to the federal and to the state 20.60%. And there's also, for the federal government, it allocated what we call 56% to the federal government, then 24.72% to the state government, and 20.60% to the local government. So you can see this dynamism. So in this topic, we're going to look at the historical perspective of fiscal, federalism in Nigeria as it relates from the period of 1946. Because I mentioned that the Richard Constitution of 1946 actually laid the foundation for fiscal federalism in Nigeria. Even though at that point in time, Nigeria was operating what we call regional system of government. Regional system of government. This is very, very important. So let us look at fiscal commissions what in Nigeria. Revenue allocation in Nigeria has become a what has been characterized by acrimony, struggle, argument over the years on what should be allocated to the center, on what should be allocated to the host communities, on what should be allocated to the state, and what should be allocated to the local government. The Richard Constitution of 1946 necessitated the you know necessitated for the first time in the history of Nigeria a revenue allocation commission. The constitution introduced what we call regionalism into Nigerian politics, like I've said earlier. According to Otto Richard, it was meant to create a unitary state with the local center, with the local government, centers in the regions that, what they're saying there is that, that the constitution attempted to create a regional structure where resources, resources will be shared between the center and the regional government. So the constitution meant to achieve, what we call promotion of unity in Nigeria, greater participation of natives in the determination of their affairs, adequate provisions for the diverse elements that made up the community. That was the purpose of the Richard Constitution in the area of fiscal commission or revenue allocation in Nigeria at that particular time. So, Sir Sidney Philipson is very important. Philipson, Sir Sidney, Sidney, then Philipson was appointed to study and make recommendations regarding the problem of administrative and financial conditions to be adopted. So the person that was given that responsibility to actually look into that issue of physical commission in Nigeria in 1946 was the man called Sidney Philipson. So the principle of derivation and even development was adopted by the Commission. Philipson Commission for revenue, allocation. So in 1946, the Philipson Commission was adopted. Philipson Sidney, don't forget Philipson Sidney. That was the name of the man at that particular time. So another commission after the Philipson Commission, another commission was adopted in 1951 to review the existing formulation in anticipation of the Mafasin Constitution. I've mentioned this constitution before. I said we have the Clifford Constitution, the Richard, the Bodilon, the Mafasin, the Licklington. They have the constitutional, conferences and the rest of them. Then we now have the independence of Nigeria in 1960. So another commission was actually given the privilege and the right to actually to review the existing formulation in anticipation of the Mafasin Constitution at that particular time. So that report was known as the John Eck and Sydney, joint kind of. So the report, was joint between John Eck and Sidney Philipson, but was known, as the Philipson Eck Commission, or you can call it the Eck Philipson Commission. So the Eck Philipson Commission added new criteria to the allocation formula. They are independent revenues for the regional needs and national interest. So at the end of that commission, the Eck Philipson Commission came up with another perspective, and that perspective was that there should be, that they are, independent revenue. It came out with the idea that there should be independent revenue for the regions, and it should also be based on needs and national interest. That was the report of the Eck Philipson Commission. So regional governments were given the power of independent revenue and tax jurisdiction. So they were empowered to improve specific taxes. So the Philipson Commission de-emphasized the principle of derivation in favor of what? Of needs and what are national interests. So proportions of what? Or specific duties and taxes were allocated to the regions by derivation, while special grants were made to them in respect of what? Of capitation, education, police and what? And the equalization. So that was the basis of what? Of the Philipson, commission of what? Of 1951. These dates are very, very, very important. The first one was called the Sydney Philipson Commission in 1946 under the Richard Constitution. They will now add what we call the Philipson Commission in what? In 1951 under the Matheson Constitution. So then another commission was actually set up. That was called the Sir Louis Schick Commission. Sir Louis Schick Commission in what? In 1953. So the Sir Louis Schick Commission was appointed in 1953 to review, the revenue formula. So it was set up with a mandate to fashion out a formula that will provide the regions and the center an adequate measure of fiscal autonomy, and that total revenue available are allocated in such a way that the principle of what? Of derivation is followed to the what? To the fullest. So if that question actually comes out in the exam, that what commission was set up in what? In 1953. That commission is what? Is called the Sir Louis Schick Commission. Sir Louis Schick Commission. We're quickly going to take a break now. Then we continue from where we actually stop, so that we can have an in-depth knowledge of this topic. We'll be right back.